why am I here? Why did this happen?
Hey everyone, welcome to the Intelligent Soul. I have a returning guest. It is Dr. Toni Reilly, and she specializes in past life regression. We're going to talk deeply about that and her new course. Welcome, Toni.
Hey, Holly, thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're very welcome. It's nice to have you. Get my microphone a bit closer. I guess that would be helpful. The the thing I want to touch on is, you've started doing the podcast gamut now, and you've been on quite a few nice podcasts that has helped support you. And I remember doing a reading for you that this would be a good time frame for you. And you're starting a new course, which really intrigues me. But we're going to first talk about just past life hypnosis in general. Why is it important for people to dive into their past life? How many past lives do we have? And are we able to go into the future? Do we have future lives? Like not just past historically in our world, but do we come from all different realms when we have different lifetimes? So let's start off with why would somebody want to have past life regression session with you?
Okay, so past life regression is always about making now better. So that's the key to it. So
Mm,
when people come along for past life regression, usually or often it's their last port of call to attempt to heal something that has plagued them for a long time. Uh, so when they come along for past life regression, the reason that I believe it's so powerful and works for almost anything is that they're communing with their soul. So the facilitation process doesn't feel like that's necessarily what you're doing, but it is. You're facilitating for them to speak to their higher self or whatever people like to call it. But I call it the soul, their soul.
oh, I like
And
that.
I think the key to the healing is that they find out why, because often we feel, well, why did this happen to me? Why did I end up in that relationship? Why were those my parents?
Yeah.
And they find out why. And when you know the why, there's this, I guess the higher purpose is revealed to you. And then there's this big relief that comes from knowing that information. Yeah.
And then once they receive, because a lot of times I've done past life regressions with my clients, and some of them are pretty traumatizing. And so is part of your work with them to help them through that past life, what they've experienced?
I always find with the regression that even what we would perceive as traumatizing, and even it actually is, for example, it could be quite violent what they see, but they go through it through the facilitation process, recall it, and it's almost as though you feel lighter from doing so.
Hmm.
And I think it's not dissimilar from self-awareness or when people discover their insecurities that are affecting them now. You think that kind of bringing something up again might make it worse, but it actually makes them feel seen and it makes sense to them. So the trauma quickly fades into
Yeah.
feeling lighter. Do you find that with your clients?
Yes, there was only one that she found it a bit overwhelming, so we didn't continue with the session at that point. But in most cases, they see it, they do cry through it, they'll get
Oh, yeah.
emotional through it, but they're not as attached as if it's their current,
Yeah.
experience from this
Yeah.
lifetime. It's much different than that. And yeah, and some of them, I had one client completely transformed her relationship with her parents once she seen three lifetimes that she had with them. They weren't always her parents, they were her brothers. They were in business together. They took turns kind of treating each other like crap. Like she had one life where she didn't treat them very well and another life where, and this was going back and forth. So after that, she decided, you know what? We got to end that cycle now in this lifetime. And she literally moved from Canada, went to Europe to spend a year with them and completely transformed. Very different relationship with them now.
That's wonderful, isn't it?
It
Um,
is.
I guess there's all sorts of surprising but positive outcomes that happen. I think just to touch on your traumatized person, can I
Yeah.
say I don't let them get out of it?
Yeah.
No matter what goes on for them, I'm like, we must find out what's going on. This has come
Yeah.
up for you, and they'll always come out the other side better. But usually it's unusual to get a client to that will resist to that extent. But
Mm,
also
mm,
sometimes it's understandable by what comes
mm.
up. But also, I guess it's important for people to know that we're talking about really traumatic events now that come up for people or circumstances, but it's not always like that.
No,
I,
not at
I guess
all.
it's that
There's
same,
awesome ones.
of course, yeah. And I guess it's that same ratio of where people talk about, oh, everyone was famous. And it's like, that's not even close to true because it's the scale of people being famous is just the same now. It's a tiny portion of the population. And it's the same thing that we see in when people are recalling past lives. So they're some traumatic ones, yeah, but a whole lot that aren't necessarily.
Have
Yeah.
you ever
But they're
had
emotional, aren't they?
have you ever had an experience with a client where they weren't of this world in a past life, like they were some other type of entity or some other type, they weren't human?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the most exciting thing when that happens is the people that have come for the regression are not necessarily drawn to that type of thing, or they're not into it per
Yeah.
se, and they see themselves. So it's like, what happened there? And I think it's even cooler because well, it surprises them. And they're like, oh, I wasn't expecting
Yep.
that. But yeah, cool, it happens. So obviously there's other realms, I suppose, or places that our soul incarnates other than Earth.
I had
They
one where,
seem to be a lot kinder, less harsh than planet Earth. I think we're on
yes.
the hard one here.
Yeah, I think so too. I had
Yeah.
one, wasn't really on another planet, but it was a guy that was doing the session with, and he just kept saying, I'm not a human being. I'm like in a tree, I'm floating around, but I'm following this girl around. Like I feel like I'm her guide or I'm her angel, or I don't know why I'm following this girl through the forest as she's walking around, but I'm not human. I'm just sort of floating around, following her. And he goes, Am I making that up? I said, You can't make that stuff. I've never had anybody say that before. They're usually human in human form. So I thought that was neat. Now, what is it that you can share with our audience how my audience how they can benefit from one of the courses that you're putting together now? It's called, what is it? Psychology. It's a psychology type course. Life.
It is. It's called SoulLife Psychology.
Yeah.
I've actually been working on it for nearly 20 years, putting it together. So it's
Wow.
basically a metaphysical approach to psychology. And the basis is, of course, that we have a soul. So we take notice of that. We incorporate
Mhm.
that into what's happening in our lives. And also the fact that we can access uh, the outline of our life's mission. And you would know that, Holly, because you do astrology.
Yeah.
So a big part of this soul life psychology, we develop these modules to help people understand what their purpose in life is, which ultimately is not an outcome anyway. It's like everything is the purpose of your life that happens. So with the soul life psychology, the people that come along to train, they can't be called a psychologist, actually. There's still red tape around or regulations around traditional or clinical psychology, but they come along and learn soul life psychology. And in the process of learning, that person will absolutely transform their own life in that process, because the way that we teach it is it's experiential. So it's you're in there and you're experiencing what you will be able to do with your client. So it runs for everything from we start out with we're always developing intuition. So that's an important part of it. To have your intuition pretty well tuned when you're working with people so that it's you don't really miss anything. Or they're telling you one thing, but you've got this intuition that, oh, maybe it's this. So intuition's key. We do that all throughout. We do life map, which is based on numerology, but we developed it to really get easily to the core of what is your life's mission, your life purpose, and what are the vulnerabilities that you'll face? What are the potential that you can work up to? What are the things about yourself that you cannot change? Might want to, but you cannot. So you must learn to accept those parts of yourself. And I think that's the beauty of Life Map. And also, you can do it with anyone. You can do it with your kids. And when you start to do people's life maps, just like astrology, uh, it's like it doesn't lie. So you like, oh my God, that's what she's like. That's what he's like. Yeah. And then also, I think it builds a whole lot of empathy for people. Don't do things just to annoy you. In fact, they're reacting to their own stuff.
Right,
So,
exactly.
yeah,
Triggers.
exactly. So these modules we developed were around just really helping people navigate life in an aware way. Um, so SoulLife Psychology, but the key therapy, if it's needed,
Hmm.
is I called it recall, because it's based off a whole thousands and thousands of past life regressions, but also people recall their childhood in this life. Sometimes they recall beyond, like towards the soul plan, but they recall whatever's relevant for what they're trying to work through at the moment, or what is going to improve their life now. So that's why we called it recall. If it's in a past life, yeah, they'll go there. If it's elsewhere, they'll recall that.
How long is
And
the course for?
oh, it's from March until November. It's online. It's small groups of that do the course. They're usually global. I'm Canadian in this intake. In our next intake, a lovely Canadian girl, and we've got girls or people from around the globe. And it's a class a week, live class, and there's also videos and notes, but it's very interactive.
Oh, is it too late to sign up for it? Or will you be having a
If anyone
second
gets the
cohort?
vibe to sign up, you got
Hmm.
to get onto it as soon as possible. We're
ASAP.
starting early next week.
Yeah. So this is, oh my gosh, what's today? Today's the 10th of March. I'll probably have this up in the next 24 hours. So get onto her website. It's down there, Toni Reilly
Fantastic.
Institute.com,
.com.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
perfect.
that's great. And what are they going to benefit from taking this course? What's the benefit for them?
Well, the first thing is the self-development that will happen along the way. That happens regardless. The other thing is whether they're already working with people in any capacity.
Yes.
They're a yoga
Yeah.
instructor, or they're a teacher, or already some sort of counselor or psychologist or therapist, then it will enhance the way that they can help people phenomenally. And I know with some of the professional realms, psychology, for example, there's some limitations to what they're allowed to do. But there's so many ways that you can incorporate this without it seeming out there, or even there's never even a need to mention past lives if it's not something that you want to be putting out there. But so you can call these things. We tried to mainstream everything as much as possible so that people are not rolling their eye and making assumptions about something that's so powerful.
Yeah, I like that. It's good because you're right. I mean, there are people out there that don't believe in a past life or they don't subscribe to it or it's nothing they've even really thought about before. But that doesn't mean that there's no reason for you to take a look at what your destiny is, what your mission is, why are you here? Are you in alignment with it? I heard something on a podcast today that I loved, and it's like a lot of people will come to him asking, when am I gonna reach this goal that I want, because that's my soul mission. That's my soul purpose. And he says the question you should be really asking is, am I in alignment with my soul mission? Because globally or on a macro level, there's so many other people involved in you getting to that point. And now, sometimes everybody's not in their alignment. That kind of holds them back. So I think that's great that a course like that in 20 years in the making. Wow, you must be very, very excited.
I'm very excited. I actually started uh training people in 2015, but it's been like refining it. How's the best
Hmm.
way to present it, teach it? But it's ready. It's taken a long time, but it's ready because um we wrote, or predominantly I did, wrote all of the modules, not just wrote them, they had to be developed. And through the observation of my clients and just all of the people around. So it's based around a lot of anecdotal observation as well. And oh, one thing, Holly, I'd love to say is I feel very passionate about this. One of the big things that I feel is one of the pinnacles in our lives, if I think it is the pinnacle, is when people go through a grieving period. It's not always from the death of somebody, but there's many things that will cause that process within us, the grief and loss process. It changes people. And I think even maybe the most anti that there's anything but the here and now person, when they go through grief, it changes them because what they know is they really don't have any control over the intense emotions that come in. And and I feel like it's the first time that a lot of people ask, why am I here? Why did this happen?
Yeah,
So grief is a huge
it's
passion
good.
of mine, and it's something that we can work really well with in this. No one gets out of it. It's a process that changes us. So you don't get out of it, but you can understand it more. And also, if you are grieving for a lost loved one or person who's passed over, we can facilitate for you to meet with them, not through a medium. I love mediums. I think mediumship's magical, but for the person to directly talk to their person, much like we do with past life regression, you can facilitate that meeting to happen, and it is mind blowing for them, and it changes them, makes them realize that there's more, and that they're I guess the energy continues, the soul goes on, their person's still there.
So is that a type of technique that you do with them as well, similar to past life, but another technique that helps you them to get to a
Yeah, I
place
call
where
it
they,
reconnection, but it's
yeah,
essentially part of the recall therapy.
yeah.
Yeah.
And do they discover what the meaning of that relationship was all about?
If that's their question, if that's their
Mhm.
question, they might, but I think that answer doesn't necessarily come from their past over person. That will come
Mhm.
from their soul. But usually when their person comes in to meet them or greet them or talk to them, it's more of a comfort. It's more of letting them know, hey, I'm here, I'm okay, and let go of the guilt that you've been feeling, or let go of this, or it's time to get back to living. That person will come and, or that soul energy will come and say that to them.
Mhm.
So, but I
I
think
like
the
that.
growth, what was the purpose of the dynamic of the relationship, usually they'll find that out through their soul, to helping them understand that.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
do you teach people how to do what you do?
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
part of the that part of this soul life psychology. Why we developed it was to create, teach, train therapists, people who can
Oh,
do
good.
this
Yeah.
globally. Yeah, that's a big part of the mission, is to teach as many people as possible. We don't want to gatekeep this, like get it out there, and let people use it. It's almost so simple that it's hard to believe. It's so profound what it does for
Well, we
people.
have it in us. I don't know if you've seen my
Yeah.
podcast where I interviewed Nicola Farmer, interviewed her a couple of times as well, working with children under the age of 7, showing them how they can teach like how they can read blindfolded. It's absolutely astonishing how much talent and gifts that are hidden from us from the day that we're born. And we do have the ability to, move into different dimensions and talk to loved ones and talk to people that have passed on, talk to our guides, talk to our angels. We all have that ability. It's just been sort of hidden from us, right? I don't think they want us to know how powerful we can be if we had all of
Well,
that.
I think what's really interesting about that is the young people who came in. The young people, they're here now. They're actually in their 20s, mid-20s. The
Hmm.
kids that started to come from 2000, they're different. They're different in, I always say that the difference is it's quite simple. They default to intuition, whereas we before then defaulted to logic. So those intuitive little young people, not even little anymore, some of them are, though they come in with this profound connection
Yeah.
that obviously, Holly, you and I have it, and so do many, but they all have it. They all have the stronger capacity to be tuned into where we're
Yeah.
from. And they don't seem to think that it's weird. It's not odd. It's not hard for them to be vulnerable or show their emotions. And not only show their emotions, deal with them and understand people in a really intelligent, emotionally intelligent way. It's like,
Yeah.
it
Except what do
blows
we
my
do?
mind.
We labeled them though, right? As soon
Yeah.
as they came in with all these different labels
Yeah.
now that we give them. And no, they're not this. They're not ADD. They're a multitasking, multifunctional, they're not too sensitive. They're actually owning their sensitivity
Crazy.
and their feelings, and they're picking up on other people's sensitivities
Yeah.
and feelings. So it's yeah, I think it's wonderful. They've come in. They've also come in here to shake things up
Yeah.
and to show the world like there's something wrong with this picture. We want things to be different. And I like that. I like that about now, since I did a session with you before, I follow Next Level Soul, and I thought that you were on Next Level Soul again, but all they did was take an old one that you were in, brought you back on again. But did it shift your career again at all? Did it give you a bit of a boost?
Oh, Next Level Soul was incredible. I can tell you, I recorded that interview probably 18 months ago. It may have even been a little longer. You know how time flies.
Yeah.
And back then, Alex Ferrari had about 500,000 followers of the podcast.
Yeah.
And it was good then.
Which is big.
It it
Yeah.
was it was a boost then. But this time, I had no idea they were rerunning it, but I was away staying with a friend and we'd been up late talking. And when I went to bed, I checked my emails and there's all these emails dropped in, tons of them. And I thought, whoa, what's happened? And I jumped on YouTube and there was Next Level Soul, and it was just
They
starting the
didn't even tell
rerun.
you you were going to be on, didn't give you a warning.
No, and it was astounding. And of course, now he's got more than 1 million followers now.
Yeah, he just
So
got
it
there.
was it was just it was an amazing response, and it's so special. I really can't thank these people enough who put the energy into creating a platform for people who are interested in this kind of thing. But
Yeah.
for me, it brings people who are, you don't get any pushback. I barely have anyway, but you don't get pushback. You get people who are like, oh, great. I've been looking for this kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's wonderful. So yeah, Next Level Soul was a blessing.
Put you to the
A
next
couple
level.
of them.
Which you did.
It
When
went
I
next
saw
level.
that, like honestly, I'm gonna joke, but I kind of stalk him. I watch all his stuff, but every once in a while in a comment, I'm going, pick me, interview me, interview me. Let me do a reading and let me show you what my work is all about. But I had just interviewed you, and then I saw you on there, so I thought you were interviewed again. And then another client who I interviewed about NDEs, she wrote a book. She actually facilitated a research book on NDEs. Within a couple weeks, she was on his show too. I'm like, what's this? My my people that I'm interviewing are going on his show. No, no, energy. I want to be on this show. But she got on there too, and it's same thing. She's 85 years old. She didn't know what to do with all this. She just got inundated with emails. But the wonderful thing is she wrote two books, so those two books got out there, which was really important. But yeah, I was really happy to see you on there. I thought that's going to give, and because I did the reading for you and I saw something coming up that was going to give you a boost in your career. I've done a past life with you and it was brilliant. We swapped services
We
and
did.
it was wonderful. Guys, if you get a chance, if she's got room now, see if you can get a session with her or get into
Mm,
one of her classes because it's definitely eye-opening. And you do it a little bit different than I do. Some similarity, but
yeah,
a little bit different. I go into three lifetimes when I work with a client, and you
yeah,
dive into the one lifetime. And our lead into it is different too. So it might resonate with you. You know, your work might resonate with you better than my work does. And then of course I look at the astrological component
yeah, yeah.
behind it. What is your most profound experience that you've had as a past life regression facilitator that you can tell someone, us?
I have so many. You know, you hear so much, so many things that are extraordinary that they kind of fade into um,
They start
one
to
another,
blend
if you
in.
like.
Yeah.
But yeah, but um, so really, I only remember a few because for one reason or another. So this one is my favorite one. This is because it's past life.
Right.
So for me, past life is it was always about the healing capacity, the therapeutic capacity. But people who would come along and be able to research themselves and find themselves in history or written in history or
Oh, that's
documented.
crazy.
That was really I it for me it was not about belief, but and or for them for that matter. But I think for other people it's like really wow if it can
Yeah.
be uh researched, validated.
Hmm.
But one of my favorite ones is it's because I knew him. It was a friend of mine's husband. He was skeptical and but obviously not cynical, but skeptical, like, Anyway, I regressed him one day and he was prolific, which was so exciting in itself. So he's recalling all of this information, he's getting all emotional, and he turned out to be recalling a time in medieval times, and he's not into it at all. Not into history, not into this, not into regression. And he's recalling all of this detail and almost like rolling his eyes as he's doing it. It's like, what? Well, this is what's happening, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah. I'm
And
making
he
all this up.
recalls this extremely brutal lifetime where actually he had killed a king, is in English history. And anyway, we came out of it and there's all of this information. And I think the other thing is people get a lot more information than they even express to you. So
Hmm.
there's all sorts of inner knowing in there. But anyway, he came out of it and he's like, basically as if. And it was such detail. Anyway, later in that evening, I was staying over. He comes out to kind of sneak out and tell us he's found this thing in history
He
that's
looked it
written
up.
and says that he sorry, jumping in his regression, he and a couple of others had killed this king very violently, very violently and sneakily in the backgrounds, whereas no one knew. And so they got away with it. Anyway, he's looked it up and found it. I got goosebumps right now, all up my face and everything. So he's found this thing in history and he's like, what the hell? Couldn't believe it. And of course,
Wow.
since then he has they have traveled and had a look at the castle because he was very vivid in his memory and his description of what he saw and where they went. We walked up here and we got in this way and that way. And so yeah, he's been to where he saw and just amazing. So it's one of my favorite stories. There's so many with so many other outcomes as well. But yeah, I love it. I love it when someone who is skeptical, I guess. Skeptical's healthy.
Yeah.
They're skeptical and it works anyway. I love that.
I think they're the best ones because
Absolutely.
they're not going to make it up. They're not, they don't have that idea in their head of maybe I
Haven't
was the,
read any books
yeah,
or yeah, there's no expectation. It just
no,
rolls out the way that it
yeah.
does.
They're expecting nothing. Like
That's
they're
it.
expecting nothing. And when they get something, it's like, they're the best ones. I know. That was like the one with the client of mine where he was floating around. He's like, what am I doing here? This is not what I expected to happen. I
Yeah.
love it. Well, Dr. Toni Reilly, thank you so much for coming back on the show. I really appreciate it. I'm glad you got a boost again because your work is, she's out in New Zealand, by the way, guys. So we got to look at the time.
Australia.
Australia, sorry.
Oh,
I thought you were in New
in
Zealand for some
Australia.
reason. Australia. And yeah, I've got a lot of clients in Australia. We always have to juggle the time. It's
Oh,
evening for
yeah.
me. It's morning the next day. You're in the future. It's the
We're in the
next morning.
future. Yeah.
You're in the future. You're Wednesday. What is this? Today's Monday, so it's Tuesday morning for you right now,
Tuesday
right?
morning. Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool. Well, thanks, guys. Check out her website. Check out her work. Hop onto her course. But I'm sure you're gonna have another one after that. Do you have a wait list on your website where they can email
We
you,
definitely have
maybe?
a wait list. If you want to get into this one, come join.
Yeah.
Otherwise, get in touch with me. Otherwise, yes, we'll run it again
Yeah, Dr.
well,
Toni
every year at
Ryle,
least.
Riley. It's with
Yeah.
an I, Toni, but you're going to see the links down there, institute.com. And thanks again. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Namaste.
Holly.